At the hearing on 14 August 2009 of the Economic Affairs Committee, which I chair, I directed the executive officials to comply with the law, principally by observing COA audit criteria, and in any event to remove their images from their infomercials by the end of August. Dapat gawin nila at sundin ang sinasabi ng batas. Huwag ninyo gamitin ang pera ng gobyerno at ng taong bayan para mangampanya sa halalan. If there is no objection from our colleagues, I shall proceed to send a copy of this privileged speech to the Ombudsman, the COMELEC, and the Secretary of Justice with my cover letter requesting criminal prosecution against these concerned cabinet officials by October. If the executive officials refuse to be educated on the law and continue their mad pursuit of public office by illegal and depraved use of public funds. Mr. President, I am now humbly ready for interpellation.
Anybody wants to interpellate? Majority Floor Leader.
Senator Gordon, Mr. President, would like to.
The gentleman from
interpellate
Zambales, Senator Richard Gordon,
Thank you very much, Mr.
has
President.
the floor.
First of all, I'd like to commend the gentle lady from Iloilo for a very dynamic speech on the matter of ethics in campaigning and in the use of public funds, particularly by cabinet officials who are obviously committing a malpractice in the sense that they are using public funds, especially after all the reports that we are really having deficits, really having hunger pains in this country, etc. Now, Madam President, Mr. President, I wonder if the gentle lady was aware of an article that came out in the Daily Star about a few months ago, where they were able to get figures from the television companies on TV airtime.
Yes.
Particularly, if I remember correctly, one Mr. Manuel Villar spent about 321 million pesos on TV ads alone. This does not count promotions, this does not production, this does not count radio ads as well, or for that matter, print ads, as well as the campaigning that is already happening, as we all know. In addition to that, one of our colleagues, Senator Rojas, has already spent, if you are to believe that article, 256 million pesos according to the TV ads reported by the different TV channels. Mayor Binay at that time was quoted as having spent 115 million pesos in terms of television ads, again, Madam President. And the 33 million was spent by Mr. Teodoro of the Department of Defense, and 45 million by the Vice President of the Republic of the Philippines. Now, Madam President, I would not normally be talking this way, except that there would appear to be a travesty of the election law as you proclaimed. And I want to point out that I truly support your suit against the COMELEC on the matter of early campaigning. Because after all, there is supposed to be a 90-day period for national officials and a 45-day period for local officials, so that we could actually shorten the period of campaign and at the same time be able to track down all the expenses which must be reported during that period. But apparently, the COMELEC chooses to use a technicality that in as much as this is not the campaign period, anybody can do as they please. Now, prescinding from the civilians who can spend their own money, obviously, with impunity, what I cannot appreciate is the matter of impunity that you just exhibited here. Those are production costs. Isn't that correct, Your Honor?
Right.
Those are just production costs issued by the Commission on Audit. This does not include, for example, the Secretary of Tourism that has been going on a campaign as well on national television, and as well as the GSIS and other entities of the government. Now, we have remained quiet for so long as we feel that the advocacy was indeed proper. But when you talk about, for example, the Vice President of the Republic saying, umutang kayo, pwede nang umutang, and then we find out in the investigation that out of 52,000 people that they have lent money to in the so-called Balikatan controversy, 11,000 of those who borrowed money out of the 52,000 have not paid a single centavo. And about 48,000 after 4 years have refused to pay anymore, Madam President. I would imagine the advocacy should be, pag pinautang kayo, magbayad kayo ng utang para makautang naman yung ibang tao. Pero what is apparently going on is that the Vice President continues to come out with advertising as if to make himself look good and saying, umutang kayo, nakakautang na kayo sa pag-ibig, nakakautang na kayo dito, pero hindi sinasabi kung ano yung mga hindi nagbabayad. And so, to the prejudice of the public, not only from the standpoint of those who can borrow money, but from the standpoint of the money that is illicitly being spent for advertising. Now, Your Honor, is there anything we can do apart from really, I mean, of course, the COMELEC officials can be impeached, but really on the matter of this undue advertising that is being undertaken by many, I would imagine that the Department of Tourism can advocate, go to Bohol, and I wouldn't mind if the Secretary of Tourism does that. But when Secretary Duque starts talking about Duque K, it is obviously a campaign ploy already, Madam President. Or for that matter, many of the others who are conducting campaigning is obviously using it really for purposes of election in the coming days. Is there any way we can expand the law right away, or for that matter, file a case against them either for malversation or an anti-graft case, or for that matter, non-visa or malfeasance in the performance of their duties? Would the gentle lady please guide this her fellow lawyer in this matter, Madam President, Mr. President?
This fellow lawyer is just pretending that he does not know. My concern as a lover of the Constitution is firstly, the state policy enshrined in our Constitution that the state shall provide equal opportunities for access to public service. Dapat pantay-pantay lang tayo na nabibigyan ng pagkakataon na makapagtakbo sa halalan. Eh paano tayo magiging pantay-pantay kung ang cabinet members nauuna na at ginagamit pa ang sarili nating pera? Di wala nang mahirap na makakatakbo kung ganun pala. Kaya magagawa natin kaagad-agad, maliban sa naturally we'll have to amend election code. Maybe we can do that if many of us return to the Senate.
But can't we do judicial statesmanship, Your Honor? Can't the Supreme Court see right through it, or the COMELEC see right through the intentions? That what you cannot do, which the law prohibits on a particular date, you cannot do beyond that date simply because, and you cannot use the excuse that it is outside. Precisely the purpose of the law was to limit the campaign period.
Opo.
And to limit campaign expenses.
Bakit pa tayo may campaign ban? Kung pwede naman pala sila mangampanya bago ng ban. Ano namang baluktot na dahilan iyan? The reasoning was this. In the election code, the term candidate is defined as a person who has filed his certificate of candidacy. No one can yet file a certificate of candidacy because it depends on the COMELEC to set the period for filing certificates. So, if no one has yet filed any certificate of candidacy, then no one is yet a candidate. According to the reasoning of my critics, then the prohibition against premature campaigning, which is punishable by disqualification from running as a candidate or from serving your term of office if you have been elected. According to my critics, because of this reasoning, then there is no premature campaigning before the period for filing certificates of candidacy. That is correct. That is one conclusion you can draw from the election code. But I also pointed out to the COMELEC that, by contrast, there is a specific provision in the election code. No person, it does not say voter or a candidate, no person shall engage in premature campaigning because that will be considered an election offense or a crime. So, between these two provisions which appear to conflict with each other, the COMELEC chose to be cowardly and instead sided with interpretation that makes it possible for politicians to violate the election code to its face by engaging in premature campaigning. That is why I can no longer criticize, for example, my fellow senators for engaging in premature campaigning because of the ruling of the COMELEC, which I have elevated to the Supreme Court. But even if the Supreme Court decides in my favor, there will be no more time because by November, we will all be required to file certificates of candidacy anyway. So, what we can do right now is we should demand from the COA during the next month's budget hearings that it should disallow these expenses because it has power to do so, and then demand from every cabinet member that it should refund the amounts that I've shown to you on the slide to the National Treasury.
That is one way. I understand that, Your Honor. But nonetheless, prescinding from the legal arguments, which I think we can argue both in the Supreme Court adequately if we want to, the fact remains is that, if I remember correctly as a younger person before, our predecessors in the Senate precisely created a campaign period precisely to limit the expenses,
Right.
to level, if you will, the playing field. Because already the playing field isn't really level, whether you like it or not, because there are obviously wealthier candidates and there are people who are what you might call have the propensity to be captured by those who own big corporations and end up with the practice of regulatory capture later on. And having said that, the bad taste in the mouth that is left upon young people that I see here around us is that kung makakalusot ka, okay lang. So much so that we have become really a palusot culture. Kung makakalusot ka, okay lang, kahit na malinaw ang objective ng batas na pinagbabawal yan, eh sige lang, basta ilusot mo ng ilusot, basta wala magko-complain, okay kung may mag-complain, kaya mong labanan sa husgado ng technicalities, then talagang unfair na talaga ang level playing field. For an example, one would have a hard time, one would really have enough, a lot of gumption to be able to address the statement made by one candidate currently who said that if you don't have a billion, you have no business running for elective office. Is that the vision of the Constitution, Your Honor? That you have to have a lot of money, or is it really just realistic? Can you imagine an America, Your Honor, in the 50s or the 60s or even the 70s, where a person like Obama or somebody we might call an ITA in the Philippines could even think of running for president and be elected, and yet their society has managed to allow them so to do. And I think there is no intimidation insofar as that culture is concerned, because what happened was, it was basically the people who paid for the campaign, if you will, if you're to believe the Obama playbook in terms of getting election and getting elected. And that to me is something that we must always try to strive for, the ideal that this country must carry their candidates by their contributions, as they do in America, where they can deduct the salaries of employees to go to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, or perhaps a suggestion that I have made that perhaps it is the government that perhaps should pay for the candidacies of particularly the president, so that everybody will have a level playing field, and therefore their loyalty will really be thoroughly and unadulteratedly and unmitigatedly for the poor folks, so to speak.
Eh kung payamanan na rin lang pagka-presidente ng Pilipinas, bakit pa magkampanya at mamudmod ng pera? Di subasta na lang natin ang presidency. Sasabihin mo, I am selling the presidency of the Philippines for a minimum bid of 3 billion pesos. Oh, let's start at 3, 3.5, 3.8, ganon. Hanggang sa makuha natin ang pinakamataas na subasta. Pagkatapos, yung pera, ibigay natin sa kaban ng bayan nang sa ipamudmod natin sa mga political leaders na yumayaman bawat halalan. Kung ganyan din lang pala. But we have to have faith in our people. They will be educated as time marches on, and we shall reach the stage where the United States is today. Dumaan din ang Amerika at ang ibang mga mayamang bansa dito sa prosesong ito. Kaya lang, katungkulan natin, I'm very happy that Senator Gordon concurs with me na ibunyag natin itong mga kasalanan labag sa batas ng ating mga kasamahan ngayong hapon doon sa cabinet para para kung hindi sila abogado, hindi nila masabi na hindi nila alam.
Kung magkamisan ho, ang tingin ko kasi dapat talaga diretsahan hayagan. Kaya I'm a great admirer of the gentle lady because he has always been able to say frankly what must be said. And with gusto. And that is something admirable because in our culture, we are not confrontational. And we just say, pabayaan mo na lang, talagang ganyan ang buhay, tumahimik na lang tayo, kaya walang nababago. Now, in this era of cell phones, instant communication, instant news, always ready, always first, always all the time, I think it is time that we cannot just say, nangyari na naman sa Amerika yan, tumagal yan. I'm reading a book called Presidential Courage right now, and I can see the things that are happening here happen even during the time of George Washington or during the time of Lincoln. But in reality, tama po yung sinabi niya. Pasubasta na lang po natin. Halimbawa, sabihin natin, si Miriam tatakbo, kumuha po ng 100 million sa mga kaibigan. Marami naman kayong kaibigan na magbibigay ng 100 million. Tapos next week, ipapakita nyo lang yung image nyo na tumutulo yung bahay nyo, o di kaya naman kayo nagbibisikleta, o di kaya naman kayo mismo ay talagang nagpapakita na kayo makamahirap. Siguro, pagdating ng 100 million na yan, matapos yan, siguro, sa mga susunod na araw, number 1 na kayo uli sa survey. Dahil yun ang ginagawa. At pag nag-number 1 kayo sa survey, para matutuhan talaga ng tao kung ano itong larong ito, ang mangyayari dyan, marami na magbibigay sa atin na mga talagang camp followers. So, sumusunod lamang doon sa tumataas sa survey. At ito, malakas, tiyak na mananalo. Therefore, dagdagan natin ang salapi na ibibigay natin dito at konti na lang ibigay natin dito sa isa at dito natin ibigay sa tiyak na mananalo para sa ganon, pagdating ng oras, yung prangkisa natin protektado, yung ating mga prerogatives ay ayos tayo at pay protection tayo. Hindi po ba yun ang nangyayari sa ating lipunan ngayon?
Oh, absolutely. You have now pointed out to these young people what is wrong with our election process. It runs on money. Kaya, kung mahirap tayo, like me in 1992, kung wala tayong pera, maaaring sa tulong ng mga mahihirap, yung mga tindera sa palengke at mga estudyante, binigay ang mga allowance sa akin, maaaring, at tapos nag-volunteer pa sila. Lahat ng rally ko ay nasa stage na ginawa ng mga estudyante. Hinihingi nila sa lumber yard ang mga junk lumber at sila mismo ang nagpapatayo. At ilang beses kami nangahulog-hulog sa aming mga rally at ino-hospital kami dahil sobrang dami ng tao sa itaas ng plataforma. Pero, ang aking nakuha lamang ay sapat para manalo. Wala na akong pera nung oras na ng bilangan. Binoto ako ng tao kaya nanalo, pero nung bilangan na, natalo ako sa bilangan. I won in the voting, but I lost in the counting. So, if that is the trend, then only the rich will be able to win as president. Sa ngayon pa lang, I have already said, my estimate is that at least 3 billion with a B is needed to run as president and have a hope of winning it. That is the ugly political reality.
Well, alam niyo ho, I've never believed in the empirical or brute reality, as you call it. Because as far as I'm concerned, kung wala yan, siguro hindi nagtagumpay yung revolusyon ng Amerika sapagkat napakalakas ng Britain noong mga kapanahon yon. Or for that matter, nung ako po tumakbo sa Concon, ako po estudyante at hindi pa ako lumalabas sa Olonga po nung araw at ako estudyante sa UP, number 1 student council ako. Nung tumakbo ko, sabi nila sa akin lahat ng professor ko, matatalo ko, mabuti pa, mag-stay na lang ako. Sabi ng mga tao ko, wala kang pera. Pero nagtagumpay po tayo, nag-number 1 po tayo doon sa buong Zambales at that time. Hindi naman sa pagyayabang. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, talagang may posibilidad pa kung talagang ile-level ang playing field. Kaya nung panahon niya, non-partisan constitutional convention, na talagang pwede mong talunin. Or for that matter, ang pinangangalandakan halimbawa, doon sa Pampanga ni Father Panlilio, ay tinalo niya yung magweweteng, di umano. O pinangangalandakan ni Grace Padaka sa Isabela, na tinalo niya yung malakas na pamilya ng D. Kaya on that basis alone, pinag-uusapan sila na pwede silang magpresidente ng Pilipinas without really looking at the capability or the credibility or the performance that they have incurred while they are in power. And so, ang nangyayari sa atin, hindi po ba, dahil dito sa labas na ito, tayo halos magkasunod doon sa UP College of Law, doon sa University of Law, College of the Philippines, kung magbiroan tayo. Ang sinasabi ng araw ng panahon natin ay panahon ng first quarter storm, ay sinasabi na guns, goons, and gold ang nagpanalo ng brad kong si Mr. Marcos in 1969, if I'm not mistaken. And because of that, ang sabi natin, wala nang kapag-pag-asa at pumasok yung non-partisan Constitutional Convention in 1971. At ang nangyari, nagkaroon ng Constitution, naging uniparty system na halos tayo KBL. Pero nung pumasok na itong Constitution na ito, nag-multi-party system, wala na halos paraan para ang mga partido ay pumili. Kaya ang nangyayari ngayon, nabibili na ang partido, namamana na. In other words, yung Nationalista Party, bigla na lang kami nagkaroon ng bagong kandidato at kandidatong presidente. Ang Liberal Party, kung nag-confess sila, pero biyak rin sila ngayon. At hindi na natin malaman kung ano nangyayari sa iba't ibang mga partido, bato-bato sa langit, tawan magagalit, wala na talagang ideological party. Kaya ako'y naniniwala na ilan lang ang partidong merong ideology. At iyan ang nangunguna dyan, halos ang Communist Party ng Pilipinas. So, ang masasabi ko lang, ang nangyayari tuloy sa atin dito, ay tila baga, ang nangyayari dito, ang umiiral, ang talagang ideology ay pera na lamang. Kaya makikita natin pag kumakampanya na ngayon, binaviolate ang batas, kaya naman natin magkaroon ng cash sunduan sa ilang mga sektor ng ating lupunan, lalo na yung nagpapatakbo dito sa ating halalan o yung mga West. Pwede mong palinawin ang kanilang malabong pananaw sa batas doon sa gusto mong puntahan ng kanilang ng iyong advocacy. Kaya ang nangyayari sa atin, we are helpless. And this Senate is helpless. We will speak here. I will speak here. We will refer this to the Ombudsman. Will the Ombudsman do anything? Sinuswerte tayo. Ang dami na nating mga pinadala sa Ombudsman na walang nangyari sa ating lipunan. And so, what do you have? A country that is floating in an ocean of turmoil para tayong mga papel na mga bangka na nilagay doon sa laot at talagang kung saan na lang ipadpad, doon na lang pupuntahan. Yun na lang ho ba talaga ang pag-asa natin at mga anak natin sa mga susunod? Ganun na lang ba? O etong pinapakita nyo ay talagang signos na talagang laws are being violated with impunity. Na makikita nyo, pati ba naman yan, kung ako yan, hindi ako mag-uniforme ng kusinero doon sa TESDA. Yung sinasabi nyo sa Iloilo, pwede naman sabihin nyo with dignity na TESDA, this is what TESDA is all about. It is here to teach you how to get jobs, and please consult our local offices, and you don't have to spend hundreds of millions of pesos in production and advertising, or for that matter, coming out with the anniversary of a city, and then all of a sudden saying, I'm spending 115 million pesos as of May, just to say, dito na kayo tumira sa Makati. Because if that is the case, Madam President, talagang magkakaroon ng congestion sa Makati. We all know that it is all in aid of election, which is a legitimate pursuit. Pero some want to be more equal than others. Some want to use the resources of the government to try and put one over the other. And there must be a stop to this. And I commend you for this wonderful speech that you made today. You took the words right out of my mouth. I would have said it earlier, but you took it as usual, ladies first, one here today.
Thank you very much, Senator Gordon. All these points are well taken.
So, Your Honor, I would like to thank you once again and commend the gentle lady from Iloilo. At I hope that hindi tayo magiging hilong-hilo dito sa Pilipinas sa nangyayaring pamumulitik ngayon. It is my fervent prayer that people wake up to this reality, and I would very much like to support you in the Blue Ribbon Committee should we continue on with this investigation so we can find out how we can best stop this malpractice. And just to be sure, for honor's sake, from day one, from being a senator, when I resigned as Secretary of Tourism, I have been an advocate of the domestic campaign for our destinations. And we have come out with Wow Bohol, Wow Iloilo, Wow Negros in all our campaign advocacies. And this has been continuous since day one. And for that matter, even when I was Secretary. But never did I put it on television because it was too darn expensive. And I wanted to make sure people were part of the process of change. And if I came out on television on Safeguard, I was paid, Your Honor, 6 million pesos by Safeguard, by Procter & Gamble, with whom I used to work for it. And all that 6 million was given to the Philippine National Red Cross, and it is on the record of the Philippine National Red Cross. Not 1 centavo went to my pocket, just to be sure that we're all on the same playing field and that I'm open with my cards like everyone else, hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Gordon.
The minority leaders
Minority
recognized.
Leader, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if the lady will kindly reply to a few questions, Your Honor. But before that, I'd like to put on record my full support for the thrust of your privileged speech, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. It is fully appreciated and in character with Senator Nene Pimentel, who is famous in our country for his probity.
Thank you, ma'am. I only wish to add a few names
Yes,
to your
please.
list, if that is possible. Number one, Secretary Yap of Agriculture. If you go to Bohol today, Your Honor, you will find out that all the way to the Chocolate Hills, every few meters there is a huge tarpaulin of advertisements of the Secretary. And what I am told by the people I've met in Bohol, I was there a couple of days ago. They told me that all the local government units within the district in which Secretary Yap is intending to run have already been promised certain amount for road, farm to market roads, this kind of thing that belongs to his department. I said this in all candor that Your Honor's speech should really be supported by every right-thinking Filipino because of the fact that cabinet members have at their control billions of pesos that we appropriate for the running of their departments to attain the objective of serving our people. But obviously, a good segment of these funds find their way for private purposes of the office holder. And therefore, I'd like to suggest that upon verification by yourself, Your Honor, you can probably include the name of Secretary Yap of the Department of Agriculture in your recommendations. And I don't know whether we should also include Secretary Durano. He also has lots of advertisements, but considering the department that he is heading, which is tourism, maybe there's a little justification for it. And besides, he has not announced that he was running for senator or anything. My own position, Your Honor, is that a cabinet member who announces his or her candidacy should immediately resign from that office in order to promote, as Senator Gordon pointed out, a more level playing field. On the other hand, I think a distinction has to be made between those who are holding appointive positions from those who are already holding elective positions, like our colleagues, for example, many of whom are running for the Senate and are also competing with the cabinet members that Your Honor has pointed out. Now, I don't know, Your Honor, can you kindly please elucidate on that point, if at all it is worth making a distinction of that kind between the appointive official and the elective official?
My first concern as a student of the Constitution is that it might violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution because it might be claimed that the distinction between elective on the one hand and appointive on the other hand is arbitrary. So it will all depend on the test that has been laid down by the U.S. Supreme Court and which has now been adopted by the Philippine Supreme Court. The test is that there should be a compelling public necessity to make the distinction. It's no longer the fourfold test by Justice Laurel in that old case. The test is now compelling state necessity to make the distinction. If Your Honor thinks that there is such a compelling state necessity, then we will reach the same conclusion.
Yes, the thing that I can see immediately, Your Honor, is the fact that an elected, for example, a senator is running for the same office, he does not have at his command, appropriations from, you might say, from the government, over which he has absolute control. In other words, unlike the cabinet member who occupies a particular department, we allocate a huge amount of money for him to run that department. More or less, once the money gets to that department, he or she would have full control in the disbursement of such funds, pursuant supposedly to the mandate of his or her department. The problem, of course, as Your Honor pointed out, early campaigning could definitely be a violation of that non-mixing of electoral ambitions and servicing our people with their basic needs, Mr. President. So I would suppose that there is a little distinction there between an appointive or an elective public official.
My only concern will be that it would look like we who are already elective officials might be favoring ourselves. It might be attacked as a self-promoting activity on our part. But otherwise, I would be willing to study a provision if this were proposed at the proper time.
Yes, so I thank Your Honor again, and please be assured of my support for the thrust of your speech. Thank you.
I am delighted, Senator Pimentel, because it comes from you. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senators Santiago and Pimentel. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the speech of the Honorable Lady from Iloilo in the Republic of the Philippines be referred to the Economic Affairs Committee and the Blue Ribbon Committee. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May I ask for a 1-minute suspension to ask our members to proceed to the plenary hall for third reading? Mr. President, we'll need a quorum for that.
Session suspended.